hear from our guest. Is Rabbi Berel Wein. Rabbi Wein is a renowned Rav, historian, author, speaker, and so much more. Rabbi Wein, it's always a privilege and pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So, Rabbi Wein, how do we explain the current war with Hamas to the world?
I don't know if we can explain it to the world. We have to explain it to ourselves first. And it's the eternal struggle. How do you explain Amalek? How do you explain 2,000 years of persecution? How do you explain the persecution of religions that persecuted us for no reason except that we were not willing to adopt their faith? The answer is that Barasi, the Rebbeinu Shalom, created in the world choice between good and evil. And evil always feels that violence is the way to solve all questions. They have no patience to discuss or think or assess matters. So just to destroy others. If you think about it logically, I don't even think the word logically applies here, but Hamas has nothing to gain here. What does it have to gain? What did they think was going to happen?
What were they thinking?
The answer is they weren't thinking. Evil never thinks. And you go back through this, what was Hitler thinking? He really thought he would get away with it? And you go through the whole of human history from, you want to start with Julius Caesar on. The answer is that they don't think. It's not part of the equipment that evil has. So evil only knows violence and murder and torture, and it only knows temporary gain, a tactical victory, a propaganda score. But in the long run, Chazal said, Sheker ein lo raglayim, right? Falseness doesn't stand. And so it's a long and bitter war that hasn't even begun yet. And unfortunately, in war, there always are casualties. But we are faced with our existential role. It's always the Jewish people that are in the forefront of good versus evil.
It's interesting you're not phrasing it as we're protecting Al-Aqsa or anything like that. It's not over the Beis Hamikdash, not over land. This is much more,
first of all,
much more significant.
It absolutely is much more significant than Al-Aqsa, their land. All of that is nonsense, and they know it, and they don't believe in it themselves. You can't run Gaza. He's going to run the whole country. It's ridiculous. But that has nothing to do with their behavior. Their behavior is based upon evil.
Right. Are there any lessons that we should learn from this attack?
Be prepared, I would imagine, to be a good lesson. The main lesson is arrogance, Look how great I am. Greatest army, greatest intelligence, the gold standard in intelligence. The showed us how puny we are. If God doesn't build a house, then the greatest architects and builders can't build it. And unfortunately, amongst us, there are many who believe in themselves. Arrogance is the worst of all qualities, because it leads to everything else. It leads to anger and argument and everything else. And arrogance is, I know better, I'm smarter, I know everything, I'm right. You have no right even to say that anything different. Okay, so the Lord here gives us, this is the Mesilas Yesharim live. It's not a book. Here it is.
Right. So you mentioned Sheker ein lo raglayim, Chazal tell us. So how can we understand how the senior Hamas officials lie so blatantly? I mean, Sheker ein lo raglayim, we try to cover
because to them there's no such thing as a lie. That's part of evil. There's no lie, there's no truth, there's no absolute scale. It's whatever you want. So if you want, you say whatever you want.
But to say we didn't kill anyone, when there are videos of it...
Listen, they've been lying for 80 years, right? And they they think they can do it because they get away with it, right? Eventually, they don't get away with it. But in the short run, you always get away with the lie.
And they've gotten away with it, and there are plenty of people still supporting them.
Yeah,
They're going to continue.
People either have the inability to discern between good and evil, or people themselves are evil. I think a great. They don't know the truth. They're evil. They have an agenda. The moment you have an agenda, you've bought into the fact that you can do anything. Because the agenda justifies whatever you do. You can destroy, you witness it to the United States of America. You can destroy the United States of America from within because they have an agenda. They recognize there are no electric charging stations. But my agenda is to destroy gasoline because of some notion that I have about car oil. Crazy. Doesn't make a difference. You have an agenda, you have an agenda.
All right, so maybe you've answered my next question, but Hamas blocking their own people, the Palestinian people, from fleeing. And bombing them. They killed 70 of them.
Because it means nothing to them, human life. They have an agenda, right? So nobody can stand in the way. Their own people can stand in the way of their agenda. That's the story of Cain and Hevel. Cain had an agenda. He killed Hevel. Why? His own brother, he killed him. Because he knows better. He's entitled. And when an agenda is fortified by the cover of religion, it's doubly dangerous. So we're living in the Crusades. You want to know what the Crusades were like? That's what it was. The Crusaders went house to house and killed Jews. Why did they kill them? They didn't even know who the Jews were. They had an agenda. The Crusades also killed Christians. Probably more Christians than Jews.
Because of the agenda.
Because of the agenda.
Right. Now, Rabbi Wein, we've been talking about Hamas, the terrorists, the murderers. How should we think about the non-Hamas Palestinians? And I'll quote.
Are there any?
So that's the question. Ron DeSantis, presidential candidate, said that the United States should not take in any Palestinians if they flee from the Gaza Strip because they are all anti-Semitic. So that's the question. How should we think about...
How do you think about Amalek? When you read in the Torah that you're supposed to destroy Amalek, Noshim V'Taf, doesn't that go against our sensibilities? Doesn't that go against what the Torah itself represents? But that's the question. If you had a chance to kill Adolf Hitler or Joseph Stalin when they were infants, would you?
Absolutely.
Why? He's an infant.
That's the Ben Sora Amora.
But you would have
Hashem Sofa.
But you would have saved 120 million people. That's the issue here. The Palestinians, they're never, a terrible time in the United States when they said no good Indian was except a dead Indian. Well, that was so today to say that is racist, bigoted, etc., etc. But what was involved was what they felt was an existential threat to their own existence.
And this one isn't so existential.
And this one is right at your doorstep, and they tell you so. There's a reason that Israeli Arabs don't serve in the Israeli army. It's not because we don't need them, we don't want them, or not even because they don't want to serve. It's because of the fact that deep down you can't rely on them, because they really hate you. So even though you're giving them everything and he's a citizen, etc., sooner or later, as was proven in the Intifadas, it was the Israeli Arabs that rioted it, not the Palestinians. They were the ones that shut down all the roads in the Galileo, killed Jews, etc.
The true colors came out.
So unfortunately, again, it's not nice to say, and it's certainly not socially acceptable, and it doesn't fit into the beautiful world that we delude ourselves that we live in. But the real terrible world that exists, it's the same thing. There were no Nazis in Germany. Everybody was a good German. We only did what we were told. How could you have brought the world to destruction? The German people voted for Hitler. The Palestinian people voted for Hamas. So what do you want?
Rabbi Wein, I'd like to get your opinion on this. We're now obviously in a very difficult situation that they have in excess of 250 Israeli captives. So when we're weighing removing Hamas from power and their holding...
It's not my expertise. I'm glad in a very sad way that I have nothing to say on the matter.
A difficult issue, very difficult issue.
Whatever we do is wrong.
Right.
So who knows? Who knows? The question was, it's the old question, right? Should the Allies have bombed Auschwitz? Would have bombed Auschwitz would have killed 30,000. Maybe it would have saved 1 million. Who knows? So these are all, again, we don't have prophecy anymore. The Lord has stripped us so that we realize that we have no answers.
Right. So one final question for you, Rabbi Wein. It's interesting to note that not one Arab country offered to take in even one Palestinian refugee.
Because they know what it is. They know what will happen to their country. They would. Hussein would, Abdullah would remain on the throne of Jordan, or Sisi and on the head of Egypt. They know the story. They know it perhaps better than we do. The only one that effectively disarmed and destroyed the PLO was Hussein. It was not Moshe Dayan. We'll see how all of this plays out. I'm reminded of the opening words of the battle hymn of the Republic, Juliet Howe. Mine eyes have seen the coming of the Lord. He is trampling forth the vineyard where the grapes of wrath are stored. That's it.
Very good. That's quite a point to end on, Rabbi Wein. Thank you so much for joining us.
We should hear good news.
Joining us right now is Rabbi Yitzhak Breitowitz. Rabbi